So it is April 2025. What's going on with the housing market? Well, I'd like to say the word tariffs, even though it's a dirty word. It actually has caused interest rates to go up a little bit. We're going to talk a little bit about that now. And then probably some consumer confidence, which I think is important to talk about, now. So, Alex Jasquez, Chief of Policy and Advocacy Groundwork Collective, said, what you need to keep an economy chugging is businesses investors, businesses hiring, and people spending money. If people are apprehensive about whether their jobs are going to go away or whether they're going to be more layoffs in the future, you're going to start to see us pull back on spending. And I think we're seeing this, that people are a little bit afraid. They're not sure. I don't know. But you guys at home, I'm definitely like, hey, should we spend this? Should we do that? What can we come back? Not that it has to be drastic, but I'm paying more attention to it than I did a year ago. As you start to see, stock market kind of come down, your net worth come down, stuff like that, retirement plans, college funds, all that. I think you get a little more cautious on it. And I'll explain to you how it's affecting the housing market in a minute. Consumer spending did decline for the first time nearly 2 years in January. I think that kind of means that we're kind of coming, along that bell curve there. As I've said, we've done pretty well in the Northeast compared to other parts of the country. But it's just something to keep a watch on, if people start to lose their jobs. Not like I think there's going to be any dramatic, but we've had a really healthy labor market. And the Federal Reserve has been trying to, I don't want to say change that, but change that and bring it down to a little more stability to keep inflation under control. Mark Zandi, chief economist, Moody's Analytics, said the risk of U.S. recession starting in the coming year was uncomfortably high and rising. I would put them at 35%, up from 15% at the start of the year. Without a doubt, I think every economist, with everything that we've seen with the tariffs and trade wars, are saying that we are going to probably hit a recession. Recession doesn't necessarily mean that housing prices are going to go down, but it does mean that the overall economy, we're going to have some negative GDP growth, which is what to be expected in there. So there's a chart that we're going to attach here. Two of the last, 6 recessions only had housing prices decline. And the last one in 2008 was due to the mortgage crisis. The last few recessions in 2020, in 2001 and 2020, home prices actually increased. People were buying more homes. Interest rates are a little more stable. The economy, even though it was a recession, it wasn't a major recession on that. Lori Goodman, fellow Urban Institute, wrote, a lot of people have the idea that home prices fall during recessionary periods. That's not really much of a connection between home prices and recessionary periods, other than, of course, the great financial crisis. That, of course, we was due because of the housing market. Number of new homes to hit the market since reaching highest levels of 2009. So does that concern me? Not necessarily, especially in our area, because we don't have a lot of new builds going up. There's just not a lot of land compared to your Floridas, Arizonas, Nevadas, stuff like that. So you are seeing on a national level, as these home builders have built homes over the last 5 years, they're starting to come on the market and seeing a little bit more of that. This is an interesting slide as well, which we'll put in there. Regional and metro area inventory trends. We are seeing Northeast, obviously we're seeing year over year a little bit up, where pre-pandemic it was down. But the Northeast, just to give you a comparison, is 9.2, where the United States as an average is 27.5. So we're about 33%, or only 33% of that, year over year increase. So that's a good sign for us as the Northeast, with the biggest in the West growth there. So we're seeing that kind of does make sense, and I think it's something to look at. What are people predicting for home prices this year? Almost every economist was showing that we were going to see home price appreciation across the U.S. There were a couple that thought negatively, but most were positive. The average is 2.7 price appreciation for the U.S. In our area this year, so far, what we're seeing is probably going to be 5%. So what does all this mean? Right now, buyer demand is still huge. We're putting properties on the market, getting a lot of showings. You have multiple offers being done on properties and people losing out on them. And people are probably a little more cautious on what they're saying or spending, but they are still buying. And I was talking to some people that have been in business for 40 years, 50 years, and we definitely have a supply shortage. With the low interest rates, a lot of times it makes sense for people to stay in their house. Rates did creep up a little bit right now. They're almost 7%. We tapped a little bit of 7. It's kind of fluctuating there. With a recession, rates do go down. But what I think is going to happen in the short term is the spring market is going to be hot. We're going to have price values increase this year. Then I think what's going to happen is towards the end of the year, the news media will say that we're in a recession. Remember, housing is a lagging indicator. And then what's happening, people are going to pull back a little bit more. I think, though, that the supply is not going to increase. I think it actually will decrease a little bit because if you're uncertain, you're probably not making a move. So some people that were on the fence probably not going to put their homes on the market. And demand will probably come down a little bit. We still have a supply issue that there's not enough supply for the demand that we have. So even if demand comes down a little bit, I still think we'll be in good shape. So, stay tuned. Feel free to reach out with any questions you have. Obviously, it's a little bit of a roller coaster sometimes emotionally. And I lean on Dana to be like, okay, what do we got here? Calm me down. And just going through it. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. Happy to go over things.